What if protecting your child is actually training them to people-please authority figures?
We start that when they're teeny tiny. So with them, not without them, or with us, not without us, depending on who's doing the advocating, right?
Yeah.
If I'm self-advocating, do it with me. Don't make a decision without me.
So what happens when adults keep making decisions for their kids instead of with them?
They're young, their brain is still developing, and two, because they're still learning within their own body of how their brain is functioning. And so this is where I come in, and I'm letting you know that she cannot make that decision as of now because she's learning how that feels for her.
This is part 2, When Help Hurts, From Protection to People-Pleasing, the Advocacy Mistake Parents Don't See. Watch or listen now.
Welcome to Empowering Women in Conversations, podcast to empower and uplift women by providing a safe space for them to share their stories and experiences and encourage the strength, resilience, and power of women. If you are tired of putting others' needs before your own, leading to burnout and resentment, and you are ready to transform and create relationships that are supportive rather than draining, join us on this journey of women overcoming adversities and achieving their true empowerment. Here's your host, a licensed professional counselor, Anita Sandoval.
When the child starts going into their teens and then going into young adults, the issue now comes that they're going to go to college, and people don't even know, some of them, that these 504 strategies, they can have these accommodations also in college and at work. And they had no idea that, according to the American Disabilities Act, that they can have these strategies so they could be able to learn effectively. How can they start practicing self-advocacy for themselves at school, in college, at work? And how can parents help that transition?
Right. So we start that when they're teeny tiny. We start that. It's like requesting that your daughter be present at their meeting.
Yes.
At least in Texas, they can be invited when they're 14.
Wow.
They're required to be there 14 and over. All right.
Wow.
I requested my sibling to be there before.
Yeah,
So
she's 11. Yeah, my daughter.
14 is the requirement, but it doesn't
Wow.
say they can't be 8 years old and be there. It doesn't say that they can be 10, whatever age before 14. It doesn't say, no, they are denied entrance. No, it just says by 14, they need to be made part of that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So with them, not without them, or with us, not without us, depending on who's doing the advocating. Right.
Yeah.
If I'm self-advocating, do it with me. Don't make a decision without me.
Yeah.
And I think you did a beautiful job in advocating for your daughter to be present at her meeting, because who better?
And
right?
what I saw also that they do, and I just want to bring this up for parents, is that they want to manipulate that too, going, oh, I don't really like this strategy. Let me ask the child to see so they could take it away. And like one of them was like, oh, well, we'll give you that extra day, but don't take advantage of it, plainly saying it. And you just, whenever you feel overwhelmed and whatnot, really? So I go, excuse me, even though she's here and she's 11, one of the diagnosing issues is that their mind and body cannot connect and register, I'm feeling overwhelmed. One, because they're young, their brain is still developing. And two, because they're still learning within their own body of how their brain is functioning. And so this is where I come in. And I'm letting you know that she cannot make that decision as of now because she's learning how that feels for her. And so when the teacher said, I noticed that she was doing this and this and that, luckily that person had knowledge with neurodivergence. And I go, thank you for saying that. And that's the strategy I want for teachers to check on the child in certain ways where it's not, singling them out, but noticing these body cues. And I mentioned the body cues that she gives, that she may not be aware of. But this is where the adults with the brain that is fully developed can help support this. But to give this to her to say and do as a child, No, that's not age appropriate for that specific. So just wanted to mention that before. Also, when we advocating and moving forward, that this is where we also have to understand and decipher, is this something they can do or is this something for me? And if they want to manipulate, oh, have the kid do it, they're still minors. And if it's a
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, as you mentioned, with some of our kiddos, their primary means of communication may be verbal,
Yeah.
Which is great. But like you mentioned, and again, that's where the parent expertise comes in, her body cues, right? Like, oh, okay, she's getting anxious, or you know what, she needs to take a break, whatever it is. Now, I will say this, when I'm working with families, with parents, I tell them, I do help them also understand the responsibilities of an educator, the teacher, because they have a lot. It's not
Yeah.
just my son in that classroom. I know that there's at least, depending on which classroom, there's 22 plus students in the classroom.
Yeah.
So imagine if they learn all the body cues for everybody, but not everybody needs accommodations.
Yeah.
Okay. And then sometimes if they're middle school and up, they have 6, 8 different classes. Imagine all those students, right? But as experts in our children, you as a parent, you said, okay, but this, and this, like these are the cues. You brought up a good point. Oftentimes with some of my individuals that I work with, they're quote unquote higher functioning. So some of these accommodations are like, well, it is on there. They have access to them when they ask for them. When the student
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, yeah, okay. Do you forget that we don't want to stand out like sore thumbs, because we already are. We already do stand out because we need all these gadgets and fidgets and stuff, depending on the condition.
Yeah.
And you want me to raise my hand and say, I need help? That developmental stage, we want to not stand out. We want to be like our peers.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's likely they're not going to ask.
Yeah.
So, I think unless the individual says, no, I got it, like I'll ask for it. Yeah. But that's once we've worked with our kiddos, right, and have empowered them enough to know, like you said, that mind-body connection.
Okay. Yes.
Help them already, identify that and oh wait, this doesn't feel right. You know what? I really don't understand. Can you please clarify, regarding those cues? If once the teacher becomes aware of this, instead of calling that person out in front of everybody, because once you bring shame into the picture, we start getting nervous, and then all sorts of other things. And all of a sudden we're behavior or challenging behavior issues now.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we've talked about, underneath all that, there might be anxiety. You just called them out. They might be upset, and rightfully so. Yeah. So what about approaching them? And or together with that student, coming up with some sort of like nonverbal cue.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Or, something to where the teacher says, okay, class, go ahead and get, work on whatever it is you're working on. We'll just take a quick break. And then, okay, what happened, Gladys? What happened, Anita?
I love how you said that.
And it could be nonverbal cues, but something that the student in this case will or potentially can come up with, or the parent says, when they start doing this, that's your cue. So because we have a lot of diagnoses that are invisible, not necessarily so visible.
Yes, and I love how you said that, because okay, so the transitioning now is, okay, when other administrators want to tell you how it's supposed to work, and you're like, no, this is my child. This is how this is going to work. This is where their brain is developing and where they're at. And this is some of their cues. I also put down why it helps me and what I'm doing on my part. When you guys do this, then I can do this, and it'll help you by doing this. And so I work with them 20, 30 minutes a day on this subject, this subject, this subject. So when I ask for this, it isn't for you to have extra work only. It's because then I'm doing the extra work on this part, so you don't have to work the extra load on your part for reteaching or doing this or doing that. And so my line is open. And just so you know, this is my part, what I will do. And I know it's hard to call the parents. So guess what? Every 3 weeks or so often, I will reach out to you. And if I follow up and you still don't reach out, then I will talk to an administrator and going, hey, what's happening? So these are things that will help on my behalf. And so, and then this is what she's going to do on her behalf. This is what you all going to do on your behalf. And this is how we work collaboratively. And so that's how we ended up the meeting. And so I like how you said that, like they're getting to know themselves. So now we're transitioning. They're knowing, oh, what can I do? How does that work when it comes to going to college and work and all that stuff?
Yeah, I'll just briefly touch base on what you just mentioned, that your experience with this recent meeting. If we're going to advocate, we need to be ready, okay, to take on a load of the responsibility. All right. If we're demanding for the IEP to say daily phone calls or daily communication from the teacher home, then we need to be ready to respond to the phone call, put thank you teacher for the feedback on the little behavior chart, whatever it is, just to validate, because, okay, like you mentioned, they have more students, and we have to understand that this is not a one-on-one education platform. They have other students, and part of that is we want to validate and also respect their position. Goodness knows that I cannot be a teacher. Like, I know I am not fit to be a teacher, which is why I hold them in high regard. Okay. We also have to be aware and understand that sometimes, depending on the school settings, some teachers don't, while they have access to it, they're not told, hey, access your system to see what accommodations or, what the IEP looks like for all these students you have in your classroom. So making sure that, again, as responsible parents of our students, is to touch base with those teachers, go to parent-teacher night, send those emails. Oh, well, parent-teacher night or meet the teacher won't be until a month after school starts. Why are you going to wait? Teachers start working a week before, or send out emails, right? And say, hello, this is so-and-so. I just wanted, if you have a minute to spare, reach out to me. If email's a means of communication, then I will do that. Or, you know what? I'm sorry, I'm not really good with technology. Do you mind just calling me? I promise I'll limit it to 30 minutes at most, or 15 if that's what you can give me. So we compromise, so because then they'll know, okay, this is a parent who's willing to meet halfway and not just throw the load. As clinicians, as a clinician, oftentimes it's like, can you fix my child? And I don't know, I actually have this little wand here that is not always on and works.
Oh my God, I love that.
Leo palmas, I'm not a palm reader. I don't have a, bola de cristal. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Okay. So, we cannot assume. We need to clarify any messages, anything we request. Okay, what did you understand by what I just said? Okay, yes, perfect. Okay, so how can you put that in your, academic lingo on this IEP? Because that's your expertise, not mine. Because while you may know how to, the verbiage and how to put it on, you want to make sure that it's in appropriate words to where the next educator, because remember, some of these, while we have meetings pretty often, these evaluations are every 3 years. We can have them more often if there's need, but every so often we have the meetings. And sometimes there's turnover. So, how do we help our child or our student transition into, it just doesn't happen, boom, 18, and all of a sudden they're self-advocates. It does not work that way.
Oh my goodness.
It does not. That's with anything. Okay. They don't just turn 18 and already know how to cook and how to work a stove and how to drive.
Yeah.
We start way ahead of time. Okay. Way before then. Wow. So, you mentioned 504, section 504. So that is an accommodations only umbrella or program. Okay. Where special education is a program. It's not the little room in the end of the hall, okay? It's a program that has both accommodations and modification of work. Okay, it modifies work. So sometimes there's even different ways that students get graded. They have grading rubrics when they're special ed.
Wow, I had no idea.
So if let's say I'm in special ed, I'm getting hundreds, and you're in section 504 and you're getting a 70. Okay, it's not because, it's just they're grading me different because maybe they gave me a different test.
Got it. Got it. Oh, wow. You also said something with 504 that something like you didn't need, not that you didn't need proof. What was it? A ver.
Sure. I think so. You don't have to necessarily have the formal diagnoses as long as you're regarded
There we
as
go.
having whatever disability it is.
God.
Yeah.
So,
And so,
like for general anxiety, or maybe major depression, these would qualify under 504.
yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. If you're regarded in ADHD, some
Yeah.
people live their whole lives, never been diagnosed. They could qualify for 504 services or accommodations in higher education settings, universities, colleges.
What do you think like they should be teaching? Let's say we're now going from middle school to high school. How can we start learning how to implement this at work? Because I know they don't do it in school systems, but where do we look for? Because I know there's some resources. I think it's the ADA, IDEA. Once we're transitioning into young adults, what are some rights or sites that we could look for to start learning how we can advocate for ourselves when we get older?
Sure. So the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, that is a civil rights. And so that encompasses schools, public settings, the community, really, anybody
Okay.
that serves the public. So that's where, like, there isn't a ramp at this place, and I want a ramp because otherwise I can't get to City Hall,
Okay.
to advocate. So then you call them up and you let them know, like, I can't attend your city meetings because there's no ramp. Sometimes what I need won't be what the next person may need, but
Got
it's
it.
preventing me. So handicaps, by the way, are environmental. They're not what people have. Handicaps are environmental. So, can you please remove this handicap? Can you please remove this barrier for me to do this? There is a caveat to this, and as a state, as I guess a nation, we are going from like private schools, the voucher programs, all
Mm-hmm.
these things. We have to remember that, again, they're private entities, okay, not public. So
Yeah.
they do not have to conform
Yeah.
with any of this, what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Okay, so when it comes to a person who needs accommodations or modifications in, let's say, in a private school, it's
Yeah.
not going to happen. At least not to the extent that a public school can do it, because they have to, it's an obligation, the
Yeah.
law.
Yeah.
Okay, but not for a private setting. That being said, I've worked with families who's like, oh, well, I'll just buy it or I'll just fix it. And it's like, yeah, but there's more to it,
Yeah.
right? You can buy a program for whatever it is, like, but is the staff trained? And if you're just going to buy it for your child, are they going to implement it further on? Well, in that case, just buy it for yourself and do it at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, not just thinking about the one person, but thinking a little, expanding that further. When it comes to, so like I mentioned, so if you're going to go to a private
Yeah.
post-secondary university, then unless they receive federal funding, they do not have to comply. So just beware. Most places, though, I will say this, even some private schools, they'll say, okay, what can we do? How can we help within our confinements or limitations? This is what we can offer. So they will. That's just not everybody. And so that should not be a standard expectation of private settings.
What about job? Because I know ADA helps protect with job discriminations with people with
Mhm.
disabilities, and there's some people with invisible disabilities, like the neurodivergent population.
Mhm.
I've heard many of patients come in and going, I got fired. I was always late, or I got into a fight, or they wanted me to be social and I wasn't social. How can the ADA help with job discrimination that
Mhm.
can have equality and fairness where it would both work with the individual and the job that they're applying for?
Sure. So again, this goes back to educating ourselves what it encompasses, right? So if I continuously showed up late, then they're going to fire me. Only because I just have a disability doesn't mean they're going to keep me, even though I'm doing everything wrong and showing up late. Okay. So there are employer rights and there's employee rights. For employment purposes or education purposes or any type of discrimination, we can always reach out. At least here in Texas, we have Disability Rights Texas. Okay. You call their 800 number. They do contract with attorneys whose specialty is disabilities, and they will help the process. It is lengthy and not all cases are taken because, again, there's funding limitations on that as well. Disability Rights Texas does not take on criminal cases. So I'll kind of put that out there. So there's Disability Rights Texas. Okay. If I'm looking for employment, I'm a person, with a disability, then I can reach out to Texas Workforce. Not just your regular Texas Workforce. There is back when it used to be known as DARS, the Disability for Assistive and Rehab Services, but it's under now the Texas Workforce umbrella. Yeah. So you contact that specific department. So if you're visually impaired, that's yet another sub-department of that one. Wow. With service and supports. If it's a student with a visual impairment, that department will provide them whatever is needed once they evaluate that person. Yeah. Okay, do they need a computer? Do they need, the high-tech assistive technology or the lower tech, just a magnifying sheet? Yeah. What is it that they need? They have these really cool glasses. They'll show you and teach you how to get them or how to use them, in there. If the professor, is using some sort of smart board or something and still hard for you to see, they have things that they can do. And you can test some of these things out to see if they're even going to be a fit for you. Yeah. One of the other things that this department is that they will do job coaching. So, when I work with individuals that are like 16 and during the summer, if they're already 16, they're going to get to work. I don't care if they're blind, if they're deaf, if they have intellectual disability, they're going to go to work because I'm going to refer them. And they do get paid, by the way. It's the Summer Earn and Learn program. And what it does is they do evaluate them. So they take everything into consideration, even medication, because some medications we cannot be out in the sun, right? Or my medical condition does not allow me to do that. So they take all of this into consideration. They do the job placement portion of it with people they have contracts with. So it could be H-E-B, Little Caesars, Peter Piper, local Walgreens, things like that. And then they have what is, depending on the needs of that person, a job coach. So someone that's going to teach them a one-to-one on how to stack or how to file or how to do whatever the job requirement is. This is at no cost to the employer. Okay. Wow. This is at no cost to the employer. And so, it's a win-win. So it teaches the individual. And oftentimes I have parents, but Gladys, no saben hacer nada. ¿Cómo? Si they don't even want to take, directions or instructions from me. I'm like, well, would you rather wait till they're 18 to figure out what's going to be needed? Because at that point, you have no say so, mama. Okay. Or do you want to do it now? And how can we have 2 years to help further evolve and improve whatever skills this person needs? Yeah. Yes. Okay, so I love how you said that. I've worked with individuals, and there's one person that comes to mind, and they did beautifully to the point where they did not need the services anymore. They were applying for jobs and applying for school, and they were in special ed when they were minors all through. So, every now and again, when I do see that person or I see the parent, they're like, oh my gosh, that was great. That was the best thing. So sometimes we do have to work with the parent because we tend to become very protective at times, as Hispanics, overprotective a lot of the time. Okay. We shelter. Yep. And so what happens is we don't allow these individuals to really open up and expand their wings. And you know what, it's going to happen. They're going to hit those bump in the roads, but that's part of life. We have to learn how to get up after those, life knocks us down. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like the greatest lesson, if anything, that I have to tell my patients is, when you protect them where they're not getting challenged and they're not in pain and they're not suffering, they're not learning, you are actually harming them, and not hurting them, but harming them. And so it's good to have these life lessons of of some type of challenge, struggle, suffering that is controlled environment within your home. And then I tell them, this is going to be harder when you're on your own because I'm not going to be here forever. So, and it's hard, but I go, this is a life lesson because we're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
And if you do not know your rights, if you do not know how you learn, how are you going to be successful in life? And is this what you want? What do you want in life? And I get to know, okay, what does my child want? What do they need? And then we work together to be like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. What is the skill that you need to start learning? And how can we start doing it now, as in the baby step, to build that bridge for when you are an adult? And
Absolutely.
yeah, that's exactly where we're at. Will the work keep you when you're doing this? Do you think that's how that's going to be? And so letting them fail as much as it hurts the mama, and I tell them that, or even the father, I go, the hardest pain is having you see your child suffer, struggle, challenged, and not be able to do anything but support them. And
Yes.
Tomorrow in part 3, we answer the question every parent avoids. What happens if I'm not always there to speak for them?
Thanks for listening to Empowering Women in Conversations. This conversation has ended, but your journey to empowerment continues. Please share with someone you know who will find this conversation helpful and inspiring. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Until our next empowered conversation with your host, licensed professional counselor, Anita Sandoval. And remember, we are brave. We are strong. We are compassionate. We are women empowered. Go out there and claim your power.